Welcome to Moving People Forward with Mark Elfstrand. This program is a series of conversations on commonly seen challenges in everyday people's lives. We hope you'll be inspired by the stories you hear today. Perhaps you know of someone who would also benefit. Be sure to share the program link with a friend. Now, here's Mark.
Have you ever tried to navigate the world of Medicare? Well, maybe you haven't tried, but maybe somebody you know has tried to do that. Well, let me tell you, if you've never done that before, you are in for a real surprise. Today, we're going to explain the importance of understanding Medicare, and especially for people who'd be approaching that age, or maybe you know somebody that's in the middle of applying for that. And we're going to give you some help today on our program on where to turn. With me today on Moving People Forward, I have two special guests, David and Lori Wylly from the Medicare Solutions Network. Wyly's, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
I figured out that you're David and you're Lori.
That was good.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, Medicare. Let's start by, you're not working for the government, are you?
No, we're not.
And you're not revenuers. Do I need to worry about that? No. Okay. So, but you are in the Medicare world. How did you get there? Who wants to answer?
David.
Independent insurance brokers that represent everything in the marketplace started about 12 years ago, helping people to try to understand the world of Medicare. I mean, it is very confusing and you get overwhelmed with literature and phone calls. But at the end of the day, if you can educate people, you can really help move them forward.
So you're an independent broker, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means you represent a number of different companies.
Correct.
Yeah. And do all companies get along with you pretty well? I mean, obviously, if you can affect their income, they have to learn to, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, they're very happy with that, I'd say.
Yeah. And when did this begin for you?
About 12 years ago, I started in the health insurance industry. Lori was in a related field. She was working in the medical world and started in health insurance, but saw very quickly a void in the world of Medicare and people coming and being very confused, started doing educational seminars, and that really helped get people up to speed on what Medicare does, what it doesn't do, and what their options are for additional coverage.
But Medicare itself, just when we think about that, it's a behemoth. I mean, there's, I don't know how many millions, but millions upon millions of people that are taking the benefit of this.
And 10,000 baby boomers a day coming.
10,000 a day. Yeah. So all across the country, there are independent brokers probably just like you trying to figure out the best opportunities for people. So David got in first. Is that right, Lori?
He did. He's been doing it for about 12 years, and I was in healthcare for many, many years.
Right.
So it was sort of a natural transition for me, and I love it because I love the educational part of this. When you see the light bulbs come on in people's faces, when you really help them understand their choices in the world of Medicare, it's very gratifying.
Okay, so why can't I just do like when I get this Medicare thing I did the other day? I happen to be on Medicare, and it says your new electronic guide is here. Can't I just go to my guide and figure this out on my own?
Well, you could, and many try to, but as David said before, the challenge is there are lots of choices and lots of moving parts. I liken it to a menu of many pages where after a while you start to think, you have a hard time discerning what choice is best for you.
So how often are changes made in Medicare during a year? Does that happen, or is it only once a year that you see significant changes?
Medicare's pretty standard, pretty set. The programs that support Medicare, that's really where we focus because there's a lot of moving parts and people will make the mistake, unfortunately, of trying to do it themselves. My experience there has been they usually wind up making mistakes. They do what their neighbor did or the guy at work tells them to do, and that could have been perfect for that person, but typically it might not be the right best fit for that person.
Are there wild variations between companies and what they offer for Medicare recipients?
It's pretty standardized, but there can be variations in pricing. That's the key, is to find maximum value in the marketplace.
Okay, when you say variations in pricing, I mean, how wild does that swing? Is it 5% or 10 or even greater?
As much as 20.
Oh my goodness.
I'd say 20% would be a good ballpark between the lowest and the highest.
Can an individual go and shop these companies, or is that like, yeah, you're asking for trouble?
You can do it.
Well, you could, but the challenge in particular is that a lot of the pricing isn't published. And so individuals would have to call all of these companies one by one by themselves. So the value in working with someone like David and I is that we represent the majority of companies in the marketplace and have software that can help put in locations and ages and look at different plans and sort of lay out people's choices for them, both pricing-wise and feature-wise.
Okay, so as I was approaching 65, I started getting invitations to come to seminars. I would get brochures. They would tell me that I got phone calls.
Multiple.
Right.
Your mailbox fills up and they put the bum's rush on you because they know you're turning 65.
Yeah, but you kind of go, well, I guess I better do something. It sounds like this is pretty important for me to do, but how would I know which one? How do you figure that out?
I think it's a leap of faith to a certain degree. You usually wind up talking to somebody who's already turned 65, asking them what they did, and they'll steer you maybe to their agent, or we've had tremendous success speaking at libraries because people look for information, they look for it in a neutral setting, an unbiased setting. That's really what the libraries are, purely educational. Come learn about Medicare, what it does, what it doesn't do, what your options are for additional coverage. And at that point, it usually opens the door to more conversation. What you don't know can hurt you.
All right.
I also think that that's the value of going to someone who's an independent broker.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the presentations tend to be put on by the companies individually. And so you're only going to get a look at that one product. So an independent broker can sort of show you the landscape of what's out there and help make comparisons and ask the individual questions about what their needs are, what their situation is, and try to match the best product to what your individual situation is.
Okay, so Lori, if I'm approaching 65, I'm in my early 60s, when should I start thinking about this?
Well, I think the education can start 6 months to a year out, the general education. But the bottom line is, in terms of actually enrolling, Medicare typically isn't going to want you to enroll more than 90 days before you'd like to start your full Medicare activation.
But in terms of learning what's out there,
Sooner's
Sooner's
the better.
better.
Yep.
Right.
but does sooner start 3 months, 6 months, a year?
We'll get people at the libraries 4 or 5 years out. And that's just plain smart. I mean, people say, when should we meet? And we always kind of say, whenever you feel your blood pressure going up. Because people will worry about it to death and maybe not take action, and information's power. Knowledge is power.
I realize you want to keep all your customers happy, but periodically, don't you have maybe some of the kids joining mom and dad in these discussions and trying to give their input about this as well?
But that's great. I mean, more eyes on the product, and more feedback. And we're seeing more and more. We see quite a few people these days that are showing up at these libraries in their 50s and started to wonder what's going on there. They want to know what's going on with mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
How long does it take before whatever you put in motion takes effect? I mean, there must be a time period here.
Couple weeks, really.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah, can be done very quickly. As long as they've got their Medicare A and B in place,
right?
Everything else follows off of that start date.
And that probably takes the longest from the sense that you're dealing with the federal government. So getting those pieces in place. Although we live in an instant society where texts and things happen pretty instantaneously, getting things activated and filing forms can take 2 to 4 weeks.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to be taking a short break, and then we're going to be continuing our discussion here in just a moment with my special guests, David and Lori Wylly, explaining how to get the most out of Medicare. When we continue in just a moment, well, wait a minute. Suppose you're still working at 65 and you got your own health plan. Should you switch to Medicare? We'll talk about that and more coming up in just a moment.
God is our safe place and our strength. He is always our help when we are in trouble. This word of God in Psalm 46:1 says it all. God is our safe place. He is our strength. He is our help when we are in trouble. Whenever and wherever we are invited, nationally or internationally, Lutheran Church Charity's mission is to bring the mercy, compassion, presence, and proclamation of Jesus Christ to those who are suffering and in need. LCC is a ministry of presence, to be present with Jesus, to lift up people in times of joy and sorrow, in prayer, and by passing through donations of dollar per dollar to those in need. Through our canine ministries, we respond and deploy with boots on the ground and paws within 24 hours, often sooner, of any crisis or disaster situation we're invited into. You see, for us, the bottom line is making a difference by being present. For people who are suffering and in need with that mercy, compassion, presence of Jesus Christ. Thank you again for allowing us the privilege to stand alongside and serve others. Jesus and your partnership make that possible to touch thousands of lives.
This is Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand. Good to have you with us. We're discussing the challenges in finding the best Medicare plan for you. And my guests today are David and Lori Wylly from the Medical Solutions Network. Let's talk again about what happens if I'm still working. This happened to me. I had a job by the time I was 65, and I had a particular health plan that was pretty good, and so I didn't sign up for Medicare. Is that the best thing to do, or how do you know?
Well, typically, the problem is that people will talk to their friends about what they did, and everybody has a different opinion, and it's really not so much an opinion as everybody has a different situation. So if you're still working and you have coverage that you like, and it's from a company that's considered credible, meaning that there's 20 or more people on that insurance plan, you don't actually have to activate Medicare when you turn 65. That's a common misconception.
What about Medicare Plan A? Aren't you supposed to sign up for that right away? Or
You can. There is no harm in doing so in most instances because there's no premium to activate Medicare Part A. You've basically been paying for that all your working life through the taxes they've been taken out of your paycheck.
And I love doing it, by the way.
I'm sure you did. Unless you are contributing to a health savings account or an HSA and have one of these high deductible health plans, that might be the only instance in which you would not want to activate Medicare Part A. But so activating A is fairly common and not necessarily harmful when you turn 65, even though you're on employer insurance.
All right, so David, you do seminars. Do you charge for people to come to your seminars?
No, totally free. And it should be to work with any agent. There should be no premium, or what you'd pay going through us is exactly what you pay going through any of the company's websites or 800 numbers. All you get by coming to us is education, navigation, helping you understand the world of Medicare.
Do you serve prime rib at any of these?
No, we
no.
don't do any of that.
Okay, fine. I was
A
just
lot of
pushing it.
these companies that are offering you these free dinners or
Yeah.
lunches or what have you, that's going to be a sales pitch. There's no two ways about it. So I think what you really want to try to do, unless you want the free dinner, is to educate yourself as to what's out there. I mean, to Lori's point and to your point on the keeping the company coverage as opposed to going to Medicare, we're seeing quite frequently now, husband and wife, it's very capable to split the spouse off of the group coverage. Most people look at their group coverage and they think, well, we're paying $500 a month. Logically, you'd think that's $250 on you, $250 on your spouse, but it's not. Typically, you work there, it's about 30% of the premium. Your spouse is about 70% of that premium. There's an opportunity there frequently to split the spouse off and get better coverage for less money.
Interesting. Yeah. So how about the geographic area that your company serves? Do you have customers outside of the state of Illinois, for example?
Yeah, we've got quite a few licensed in 14 states. Wow. There's an exodus from the state of Illinois, and a lot of people are moving to sunnier climes. So we've got licenses in most of those southern states to be able to help those folks out when they move.
Okay, so if I came to one of your seminars, kind of walk me through a little bit about the way you conduct that.
Keep it really basic. Try to keep it very simple. It can be confusing, but if you break it down into bite-sized chunks. Medicare is A and B. Got to have that. That's from the federal government. And A and B is outstanding, but it's not complete. In support of A and B, you would look to pick up additional coverage. That could take either of two pathways. One pathway called Original Medicare, A and B with a drug program and a supplement to complete that package. But there's another pathway called Medicare Advantage, and that's growing in popularity, but that's where the government pays a private insurance company and they run everything for you.
And it just really depends on what your medical needs are as to which of those programs is better for you?
Sure. The specifics involved, and both pathways have positives and negatives. It's a question of a needs analysis and what's specifically right for your situation. And it's not unusual. The husband would be on one pathway, the wife would be on a different pathway, depending on their needs.
So I read someplace that you kind of have to, just from the get-go, have to understand the difference of the letters that Medicare offers. And I mean, you can almost get lost in some of those as to which plan is best for me.
Call it the alphabet soup.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and there's parts of Medicare. So Medicare Part A and B form the foundation.
Right.
Medicare Part D is the drug plan piece of that.
Okay.
But then you have Medicare supplements that unfortunately are also lettered, and they run the gamut from, A to Z, but there's 10 of them. And there's also a Plan A and a Plan B and a Plan D. So it can be confusing depending on the lingo and your understanding of it.
Okay, so with a customer that comes to you the first time and they go, yeah, but I don't think I'm ready to make a decision. What do they do in between? I mean, what do you once you've explained all the options, do you make recommendations and then they're just to think about that for a little while? How does that work?
I would say not unusual at all that you'd work with somebody, sit with them frequently for an hour just to calm them down, explain how Medicare works, what their options are. And if they want to think about it, that's absolutely fine. Take your time. This is a big decision. And to just understand the moving parts, and frequently husband and wife, they want to have a discussion after that point. That makes all the sense in the world. Take your time.
Okay, so I take a number of medications, and so therefore I have a drug plan, and then I understand with the drug plan that I'm going to run into something called the donut. Now, normally I don't mind that because I like donuts, but this one I found I really don't like that much. Who's going to explain that to me?
Well, I can. I mean, there are stages of coverage that you move through in the world of your Part D drug plans.
Yes, okay.
And there's the initial stage of coverage where you're paying just a co-payment for your medications typically. And when you reach a certain threshold, Medicare sets a threshold whereby they're tracking the retail value of the medications you're acquiring. And if you were to reach that threshold in any given year, and that changes a little bit from year to year, you move then from paying co-payments for your drugs to paying a slightly higher percentage of the cost, in particular of your tier 3, 4, and 5 brand name medications. Now, the government's sort of been shrinking that donut hole year to year.
Really?
And we're now at the lowest stage it's ever been, where when you reach it, you're only paying 25% of the cost of your brand name
The
medications.
retail value of the meds. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so
That's probably the most confusing part of Medicare because people don't understand it. They need to get educated on it. But the beauty of the drug program is that you do get a do-over every year during the annual election period. That's from October 15th to December 7th. Important period of time where every year you can change your drug program. The beauty of Medicare is that it's totally customizable to whatever you want it to be, and you can change it through the aging process.
Okay, another kind of a surprise to me, if you've had another health plan with another company, they say, oh yes, and we have a vision plan for you, and we have a dental plan for you. And Medicare? Do they have those plans?
Well, Medicare covers diseases of the eyes and mouth. So,
injuries.
Correct. But they don't cover normal maintenance. So if you need a pair of cheaters every year, or if you need to have your teeth cleaned, no, Medicare doesn't cover that. And so what most people will do is pick up some standalone coverage to cover those instances.
All right, well, this is not a political program, but I am going to find out from you. What do you think of Medicare for all?
Can't work.
Can't work?
Well, the reimbursement that Medicare pays the doctors is very, very reduced. It's great for the consumer, but it doesn't make doctors particularly happy. It works for the seniors because there really is a bit of a cost share. They take less on the over 65 population because they make more on the under 65 population. And I would say that if you went to a Medicare for all, you'd see a lot of doctors. We already see an exit in doctors. We actually need way more doctors than what we've got right now. You've got 10,000 baby boomers a day turning 65 and doctors are leaving. This is supply and demand. That's going to drive prices up. If you see doctors not getting paid what they believe to be fair amounts of money, they don't have to take Medicare. I just don't think that that works based upon the current parameters.
Well, I trust that those who've enjoyed our program today have learned a lot about Medicare. And the Medicare Solutions Network is where you can find out more. You have a website, I assume, right?
We do, www.medicaresolutionsnetwork.com.
MedicareSolutionsNetwork.com. David and Lori Wylly, thank you for being with us today.
Appreciate it.
And that is our program for today. As the sages have told us, friends, grow in wisdom, think humbly of yourself, and love one another. And may it be so with you. That's today's Moving People Forward. I'm Mark Elfstrand.
Woof!